Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Anime King, and I hope you're all having a wonderful day. And if you're not, let me try and make it a little bit better. Today I'm going to be giving you part 20 of What If Naruto was a direct descendant of the sage. Remember to get this one to 100 likes as usual, share this to all of your friends in your social media platform, and also guys, stay in tune for What If Naruto had cosmic energy over an anime making 3, which I do hope that you guys will enjoy, and also a new episode over an anime king 2, which I do hope that you guys enjoy. And remember, if you're new, to go ahead and click that red subscribe button and become part of the Anime King family. Anime King 2, and Anime King 3. All links will be down in the description for you guys to enjoy. So yeah, without further ado, what is to begin this new episode? Start the intro. So the last time we left off, as Naruto was showing the group around the village, only to find out that all the monks had been gone. The head monk had called all of them back a couple years ago, as it was the same time when Naruto came to the temple. He was confused for the reasoning, as he wondered if it really had something to do with him. He really wondered. As Naruto started to show Fu and Haku around the village, until he finally arrived at somewhere that caused him to break down, as he was in front of Ichiraku ramen stand, where it used to be, as it was no longer there, seeing that the Ichirakus were now dead, as the both of them comforted him. The time came, as Naruto had smiled on his face as he watched a Hyuga down there. He had a fond memory of a Hyuga that came to the temple, and Naruto was able to remove the seal by just absorbing the chakra from his forehead. The man was completely shocked that he could do that, and that is the reason why Naruto created his new fighting style, as it was based on the Hyuga style, but for defensive purposes. As he also met up with Temari and Matsuri after going towards where the gravesites were, as he said his piece to the two Ichiraku ramen members, as both girls were surprised that they know him. Temari was surprised that Matsuri know him, and Matsuri was surprised that Temari know him. After that was over, the matches continued on until the invasion began. Konoha was being attacked, as Naruto used his power to conjure up all the sand and capture everyone in an orb. After he had spoken to them and they didn't listen, as he made his way straight towards where the Hokage was trapped, he wouldn't let his last memory of someone that he cared about in his village die out, as he made his way towards there. Meanwhile, Fu was taking on the Jinchuriki Han, as the man that came in to destroy the place, as Fu was trying her best, but the man was fast. But once she started tapping her cloak, he had to tap in his as well, as Haku came over to help her as well. Even though he didn't like the fight, he was going to help her no matter what. As Naruto arrived at the barrier, as the Sound 4 was telling him that he couldn't get through, he simply absorbed the chakra. But then a coffin rose up right in front of him. What Naruto saw shook him to his very core. So yeah guys, that was basically that's what I thought. You guys can switch across to the playlist and check it out for yourself. So what do you say we begin this new episode? Shizuku? Naruto took a step back, his Shakijo falling out of his arm, as Naruto looked at the girl that he cried over, who died right in his arms. It was her, really her, the familiar dark blue chakra coursing through her body. It was her. Except at the same time it wasn't. Lines and crack was over her face and clothing. It looked like she was pieced together from some doll. Her eyes were now dark and grey. Naruto? One of her arms lifted towards him, before she lowered it, as she thought about it. She was exactly as he remembered. Her voice was the same, wearing the same clothing. Is it really you? She smiled, as Naruto struggled to hide the emotions that were flashing across his face. Your hair is longer, and you get taller, she said. But your eyes, it really is you, she said, as his eyes were wide open. Shizuku, how are you here? I don't understand, he said. He was really struggling at this point to keep the emotion out of his voice, but he couldn't help it. I saw you die. Her smile died down as she placed her hand to her throat, as Naruto got memories of her, bleeding out on the ground, that made him take a step back. I remember that, she said. She seemed confused as well. She snapped her eyes around, looking at the village with cocoons, with nature's trapped inside. What is going on, Naruto? Where are we? But before Naruto could say anything, a chuckle could be heard across the rooftop. As Naruto's eyes widened, something grew from behind the tiles, behind Shizuku. She didn't turn, as she seemed frozen by that very voice. Oh come now, answering everything would ruin the fun, wouldn't it? A tall, pale man with dark hair emerged from the roof, his body slumped over, with a thick purple robe tied up around his clothing, brown and white. His eyes were slated like a snake's, golden. He looked just like a snake's when it comes to resemblance. Although I suppose having you wandering around the dark would just amuse me for a short amount of time. The man seemed thoughtful as he brushed a single finger against his cheek. Finally, he smiled in a sadistic way as he placed a hand on Shizuku's shoulder. Her eye opening wider at the touch as she seemed to be unable to move. Yes, having you know would be so much more satisfying. His gaze fell on Naruto, golden eyes, meet violent purple. What are you talking about, said Naruto. Having this man appear had broke him out of the shock of seeing Shizuku. But something was there, something in the back of his mind that he should be remembering. And it was, well, cursed him not to, seeing that he had a photographic memory. I suppose. Just how much to say? Well, how about this, he said, as he raised his hand and, running through Shizuku's hair, before placing on top of her head. Do you like her? I brought her back especially for you, Naruto-kun. It took me so long to find the samples that I left behind from her DNA. As his smirk widened as his long tongue came from his mouth, licking his lips. You're just lucky, Naruto-kun, that I never threw out samples, even for failed experiments. As Naruto had started tightening the fists. Otherwise, I might have to disturb that lovely monument that you made for her. Very, very touching, by the way. His voice was hissing like a snake. How did you find that, said Naruto, as he was beginning to lose his control over his emotions. Seeing this man hold Shizuku like this, talk about her like this, it was beginning to be too much for him. The man simply smirked more by the outburst, as he seemed to be loving this. Every single moment of it he was loving. Oh, but you leave quite the trail, Naruto-kun. And I have agents everywhere, just waiting to give me information like the pet they are. Did you really think no one would notice you? Did you think the hero of Kiri would remain a secret forever? Nothing can hide from me, Naruto-kun. Especially with someone that have eyes that are remarkable as yours. But right now, that is beside the point. As he started running his hand through Shizuku here once again, as Naruto clenched his fist even harder, as Shizuku grimaced by the touch. I asked if you like her, if you appreciate the effort, all I went through to bring her back. What do you mean bring her back? What is this, said Naruto? This, my young Naruto-kun, is the result of the Edo Tensei Jutsu. A jutsu created by the second Hokage that I completed. It pulled the soul out of the pure world, locking it in a form for me to control. Naruto's eyes widened at that, but he felt a bit of hypocrisy. Was that not the same thing he did to Haku? Well, there's a small matter of it involving human sacrifices, but for immortal soldiers with unlimited chakra, I think that's a small price to pay. As Naruto realized he was nothing like this man, able to throw away human life so casually. So that is your intention? You brought her back to fight me? As Naruto almost felt ill at his own words. To see her die was enough for him, but to fight her with his own hands. Orochimaru simply grinned at that. Oh, of course not. Sensei and the Kazekage are fighting the reanimations of the first and second Hokage as we speak. However, they are merely mindless drones, fit only to be a tool to accomplish what I want. The man pulled a kunai out of his pouch, with a talisman on the hilt of it, as Naruto's eyes widened in realization. However, for you that just wouldn't do. Having you fight a mindless puppet would just serve no use. Not to mention, it wouldn't be that entertaining. Before Naruto could even move, the man plunged the kunai, the entire thing, into the back of Shizuku's head. Orochimaru, said Naruto. Ah, you finally figured it out. I suppose the rumors about you traveling with dear Tsunade are true. Tell me, how is Tsunade Heim doing these days? Still afraid of any kind of responsibility, I suppose. But Naruto didn't say anything as he watched the cracks and lines across Shizuku's body start to close up. The color returned to her skin and her eyes. It seems like she came back to life once more. Oh well. I suppose I can get my answers another time, Naruto-kun. You bastard, said Naruto, as a black rod slipped from his sleeve, as he raised his hand. Universal pull! Orochimaru found his feet lifting off the ground as his body sailed through the air. There was a sick squelching sound as Orochimaru impacted with Naruto. My, aren't you just full of surprises? Naruto's eyes widened, seeing that his struck rod had pierced Orochimaru's heart. But this was not the real one, as his body started to burst away into earth. Enjoy this, Naruto-kun, you will seek me out eventually, one way or another. Then he was gone. Naruto didn't get time to wonder about this as his senses warned him about danger. As he leaped off the ground, a massive wave of water shred through the side of the building, destroying many other buildings down below. He flipped. Another massive wave came towards him mid-air. He turned his hand. Almighty. Push! As he blew it away. Flipping and landing on the ground, Naruto saw her. Shizuku? She flipped through hand sign. Naruto, watch out, she said. All around, water started to rise up in the air from a liquid around her, as she was literally pulling moisture from the air as well. Then a massive vortex spin as it came barreling down on Naruto. Naruto raised his hand as it was blown to pieces. As Shizuku was panicking, I can't control my body, Naruto. I'm not doing this. Even as she spoke, her hands were raised into seals. She didn't want to perform. As Naruto leaped away as another mighty water slammed into the side of the ground. She flipped through hands again and created several torrents. As Naruto raised his hand, a massive sand wall erupted and her water torrent slammed right into it. The sand started to turn darker brown as it started to absorb the water. With Shikaku's help, Naruto was able to maintain it as the sand then became thicker as it ran the water off to the side. After that, Shizuku jutsu ended as she was unable to maintain it anymore. Her chakra capacity had ran low. While her reserves might be endless, there was still a limit to how much she could use at once. As sand raised up once again and wrapped her up in a dome, a look of relief washed over her face as the dome held on to her. As Naruto looked down in sadness, but the sand started to get wet as a large part of it started to get wetter and wetter as water started to pool out. As Naruto watched, a moment later she reformed as she reformed out of the water, standing there behind the sand dome that fell to the ground. As Naruto almost cursed himself for forgetting her hydrification technique when he never saw her use it to this extent before. It seems whatever this Edo-Tensei did, it also made her abilities work to their fullest extent. Naruto, please, she said as her hand was twitching to move. You have to fight back. Tears started to fall down her cheeks as she tried to struggle against this jutsu control over her body. Shizuku, I can't, he said. Her head lowered as few bangs dropped across her face. It made her to remember when he used to sit with her and brush a few strands away. When she looked up, a sad smile ran across her lips. I know you don't want to. I don't either, but you have to. As her hand flipped through hand sign, as she stopped right to untie her seal. You have to, she said. As a thick moisture spread everywhere into a fog that surrounded the village. As Naruto heard a sword being drawn from a sheath. You remember this, don't you? The voice sounds like it was coming from every direction at once. He frowned as he didn't remember this when Ao had taught her one of Kiri's most famous and dangerous techniques. That wasn't to say that she became a master of the silent killing technique. She was far too kind-hearted for that, but she had an advantage where others did not. A Kiri ninja would have to spend months training to completely erase their sound, so they could move through the fog. But thanks to her control over water, she was able to thicken the mist to the point where it did that job for her, completely erase her. And with her body being controlled right now, she wasn't going to be holding back. And she wanted to fight back. She knew he wouldn't fight back, and she couldn't control herself, and she didn't want him to get hurt no matter what. You seemed so unsure the day Ao Sensei gave me a tanto. I know that you want to shelter me. You wanted to protect me, she said, her voice echoing around. But I wanted so much just to be useful to you. I want to do something to make you proud. I was always proud of you, he said. As Naruto tilted as a blade sliced right by his ear. He then turned as she dropped back into the mist. The worst part was he couldn't even use the Agro technique in here. Her control over the element was stronger than his. If he used the Deva path, he would hurt her. Seeing that he had no idea where she was. You have to fight back, Naruto. If you don't, I won't stop. This body won't stop, she said. Naruto grit his teeth. I can't. As he once again moved to the side, using Wing Chakra for a burst of speed. His arm then changed by the Azure path as he blocked the blade. It was so instant as he scratched his arm. She dived back into the mist. He looked at his arm. It was always feeling so hollow and cold whenever he used his path. Naruto, please. This is the only way, she said. Her voice was becoming desperate as she realized if he didn't fight back, she would actually hurt him. No, it isn't, said Naruto. As she appeared in front of him, her body did not hesitate to bring the blade down. Her eyes widened, but then Naruto's body erupted in lightning, sparks dancing over him, enhancing his body. As he turned and held out his hand, she prepared herself for the gravity force, but her charge was not stopped. She opened her eyes as she saw her blade that ran right through his hand. As her eyes went wide, she did not notice that his hands was not bleeding. It was like he didn't get hurt at all. As her body tried to move back, but he curled his hand around the blade, grimacing from the strange feeling. It was like his own body wasn't his, like he was controlling a puppet, but the phantom pain was still there. He hated using the Azure path because he used it on a body part. It felt like he lost that body part. It was like he was controlling a robot. Naruto, she said. As she tried to pull at the sword, her arm just pulling back, but he couldn't move free. As much as he tried to stay emotionless, he could not. I missed you. I missed you so much, he said. As her head lowered, tears started to fall down immediately. Here she was, and she couldn't find the words what to say to him. Please, Naruto. Kill me, she said. Naruto's eyes widened for a moment. You know I can't do that, he said. She looked back up. Then what she said, tears streaming down her face. You have to do something. Then I'll be forced to kill you. I don't want this. This existence is horrible. If you don't kill me, then I'm stuck like this, fighting whoever that man tells me to kill. Killing me now will be merciful compared to that. She stopped trembling as he looked up at her, a small smile on his face, while an entire year had passed for him. To her, it was just like yesterday, when she was looking up at him as he was crying, as she told him not to. What if I could bring you back, for real? She blinked in surprise, as she didn't understand what he was saying. But he was serious. I did it for Haku. I can do it for you as well. I'm sure of it. Naruto was cut off as her finger pressed up against his lip. Her hand was shaking hard. It was taking a great will on her part to do that. Please, Naruto. Let me go, she said. Naruto looked at her. She pressed her finger a bit harder. Please, Naruto. Just let me go, she said. I don't belong here anymore. My time has passed. She looked down, her hand falling down, as she lost the control to hold it there. My time to do the things I wanted was then. It is gone now, she said. I will always regret the things I could never say. As she looked at him again. But regrets are for the living. Please, let me go. But I couldn't save you. Her hand trembled as she brought it to his cheek, as she wiped away the small tear that came from his eye. Maybe. You weren't supposed to, she said. As she grabbed his hand and placed it towards her chest. Please, just do what you can, and set me free. As Naruto trembled as he felt her heartbeat, it felt so real, so alive. Shizuku. She felt her sword start to slide out of his palm. Please, Naruto, you have to do it now, she said. Naruto's hand flexed as the sword was pulling back. I'll never be able to let you go, he said. As she felt something. Thank you, she said. As she gave him a final smile as Naruto pulled back his hand, removing her soul with it. He held it there, as it started swaying in his hand, as the two of them crumbled away. Her soul flowing off into the sky where it belongs, and the earthly form breaking away to dust. As Naruto stood there as the mist started to disperse, the chakra, it wasn't there to sustain it anymore. He collapsed to his knees as he released all his sorrow, all of his pain, all of his frustration, as tears leaked from his eyes like a river. It felt good to finally cry out all the anguish that he felt, let it wash down his face. He then stood as he wiped away the last of his tears, as his face turned dark. As he turned towards the purple barrier, he stepped towards it. Deep in his mind he could feel her memories, her feelings. When he touched her soul, he took more than her life. He took her essence. She will always be there with him, everything that made her who she was, driving him forward. Right now though, he had put it aside as he stepped forward, as he passed through the burning barrier, as the massive trees were inside the barrier in front of him. As Naruto chakra started to swell, as it started to swell even more, he raised a single arm. Almighty! Push! Moments earlier, Hiruzen was fighting for his life as he dodged away from another mighty water blast. He swung Enma as he tore through the tree vine that tried to wrap him up. He saw a flash of gold. A mighty gold stand was blocking a Earth-style jutsu. The 4th Kazekage was blocking each and every attack from the 3rd Shikage. However, Hiruzen knew that it was only a matter of time before Oniki started to use some of his more dangerous techniques, like the dust release. Hiruzen had never seen it before, but he heard stories from his sensei, the very same man that he was fighting right now. Once again, he had to throw himself out of the way from another blast of water that tear through the roof. As Hiruzen flashed through hand sign before slamming his hand down, a mud river was created. As he flashed through hand sign once again, he breathed out a massive streaming flame, creating a molten, hot tar that seemed to run towards the 2 Hokages. This was what that made him famous, his ability to create collaboration jutsus on his own like this. The 2nd Hokage tried to conjure water for defense, but the air was dry by the tar. Not to mention his body was not at 100%, given that Edo Tensei was holding back most of their strength, as he was taking over by it. But Hiruzen knew that it would only be a matter of time before he reformed. The 1st Hokage was faster though, as he covered himself in a thick layer of wood. That same barrier was once able to stop a Biju in his tracks, and even weakened by the Edo Tensei, it was still powerful enough to stop his attack. But it did buy him time to relax, as he took several deep breaths. His partner took notice of that. The staff that he was holding onto, a large monkey grew from the end of it. What are you doing, Hiruzen? You know that you're far too old to be using these jutsus in collaboration. Your body just can't take the strain. Hiruzen offered up a tired smile as he pulled himself back up. Come on now, Enma. I've known many shinobis able to fight well past my age. The Monkey King huffed, as he didn't find this amusing at all, as he was watching his longtime friend kill himself in this battle. Yes, and all of those were either Senjus or Uzumaki, neither of which you are. Hiruzen let out another weak laugh as he cracked his neck, as he started to feel strains on his tired bones. Yes, that's true I suppose, but you shouldn't be worrying about me, old friend. Right now, our best bet is to help the Kazekage. Its gold dust is our only chance of subduing the 2 Hokages long enough for me to deal with this entire deal. Hiruzen watched as the 2nd started to regenerate his body, reforming from nothing. If you come down to it, I will have to use that jutsu, said Hiruzen. Enma eyes wide as he knew exactly what Hiruzen was talking about, as he saw a steel in Hiruzen's eyes that hadn't been there in many years. He snorted as he started to fade back into his staff form. In any case, it has been an honor fighting alongside you, my old friend, said Enma. Likewise, said Hiruzen, as he prepared himself to face off against them once again. But before they could react, the ground rumbled, the trees shake, everything started to tremble. And then it went off, everything exploded. Tree limb, barks, tiles, everything was sent sailing. All of them had to shield their eyes and protect themselves, as a huge part of the forest was ripped to pieces. Barks and wood was fire everywhere. All but the reanimated Kages had to shield himself. Hiruzen bat them off with his staff. The Kazekage created a shield from his gold dust, saying that only he was behind him, he got shield as well, even though the Kazekage didn't want to shield him. Finally, Orochimaru sank down into the ground, allowing the sharp shrapnels of wood flying over his head, as everyone turned towards a bright light. The foliage was dark, seeing that the wood style had blocked out everything, but now the place was illuminated, with one person standing there, the silhouette of a man, the cloak bristling in the wind, the shakido in his hand, and the horns coming from his forehead, and they also saw his eyes. In that brief moment where only could see his outline, everyone saw those purple eyes burning with a rage set in them. But as their eyes adjusted, they saw a blonde boy. The thing on his head was a headband with horns coming from it. Hiruzen's eyes widened, even if his whisker marks had somehow vanished, and his eyes had changed from the cerulean blue that he used to have. There was no mistaking it. Naruto? Hiruzen said, as Naruto looked softened for a moment, a brief moment, as he glanced towards a man that was a grandfather figure in his childhood. Aside from the Ichiraku family, he was Another one that gave him hope. Yes, someone that was there for him, someone that spoke to him as Naruto, and not a monster, and then glare at him. Hey there, Gigi. It's been a long while, said Naruto. Meanwhile, as Haku and Fu was having a hard time, Fu was up to a three-tailed cloak, and it was already placing a strain on her body. Haku Ice was no match for the burning chakra that surrounded the hulking man, as Han burst through everything they threw at him. Fu was sent sailing as a backhand, slammed into her. She brought up her hand in X motion to block it, but the man's strength was so much pronounced as she smashed through two buildings before slamming right into a wall. She struggled to pull herself out before she collapsed straight down to the ground. Her cloak had taken much of the impact for her, but being thrown to two different buildings hurt, and being slammed into a final one, yeah, that hurt a lot. With a groan, she slowly picked herself up in pain. She quickly flew up. The moment she did, Han crashed down as he was in his two-tailed cloak, destroying the ground. She flew past him and fly straight up. As he sent his tails after her, she twisted and turned and dodged them. Once she was a distance away, she stopped and she panted. Her power and speed just wasn't enough to bridge the gap between their respective experience. As being a Jinchuriki, Han had more experience by far, and he had the strength, the speed to counter everything that she threw at him as well. What she needed was to decrease the gap between them, but she didn't have the time. Well, Han wouldn't give her the time at all. But as if he was reading her thoughts, Haku appeared in the building. In a sunshine, Haku was already speeding through hand signs. As Fu glanced towards him, he was exhausted, she could see it. His posture wasn't quite as correct as the way he usually hold himself, and he was sluggish a bit, with his movements moving a bit slower. He was in a battle with Jinchuriki. He just didn't have the stamina to keep up, but he was still trying his best. He finally finished his handstand as he slammed his hand down on the roof of the destroyed building. Ice started to spread out from the contact, coating the ground like winter was coming. When it reached a gaping hole in the roof, it just kept on going, spreading across like a transparent loose of ice. Han tail strike out towards it. But, to full surprise, the ice held up. It cracked, but it started to heal over. Han started to bash at it over and over. As strong as the ice was, he couldn't stand up to two tails smashing into it repeatedly. As Fu saw Haku tiring, as the boy was shaking to fix the cracks that Han was creating, she knew that she had to do something. She had to dig deeper. As she reached within herself, focused on her chakra. She focused on that she pulled as much as she can. Her cloak thickened as she formed two more wings. Haku's eyes couldn't hold on any longer as it broke. As Haku was spent, he was tired, unable to continue, but he bought Fu enough time. As Fu twisted her body, as she felt the air current shifts, as she spin faster and faster and faster in the sky, until she was nothing but a red blur. She then dropped. She dropped like a meteor. Her body smashed through the remaining ice as it came straight down towards Han. Boom! She smashed down with so much power, the entire building was blown to pieces. Everything in a mile radius was blown away by the collision. The force blowing everything away. Haku had to leap back as the force slammed into him. He flipped several times in the air before crash landing on the ground. Luckily, he wasn't hurt badly. He removed his hat from his eyes. He had to cover them. Dust and smoke was everywhere, but it was lessening up right now. As Haku slowly dragged himself over, as he saw the creature was large. It was like someone was drilling right into the earth itself. Right at the bottom was Han. His armor completely ripped apart, as his breathing was shallow and slow. Nearby, Fu staggered to her feet, as she was unable to stand up for too long. As her legs were shaking, she dropped to one knee, panting heavily. Her body was burned badly from her own vile chakra from the rapid spin, but she refused to fall unconscious. Haku rushed over as he helped her, supporting her with his shoulder, despite him being exhausted as well. Finally, the two managed to get into a comfortable sitting position as they regained their breath, slowly taking deep breaths in and out. Fu wanted to go over and help Naruto, but in her current condition she could not. She would just be a burden at the moment. So, what do we do with him? Fu turned her head as she looked towards where Haku was pointed at Han's unconscious body as he had passed out. She shrugged. She was too tired to think about that, after all. He was too large for the both of them trying to live right now. But She saw a sand tentacle enter the destroyed building. It looked around them for a moment. It was like a dog sniffing them to see if they were right, before it moved on towards Han, as it wrapped Han up into a tight ball till only his head remained outside. Full sign relief. It was over. And with that she passed out, unable to contain it anymore, as Haku released a small sigh. It was finally over. He was tired but not entirely gone, he had enough to watch her full, to make sure that she was okay until Naruto came back to them. As he looked up, he had a feeling that this will all be over very soon though. Meanwhile, Hiruzen couldn't believe it. But he didn't get long to gawk at Naruto because Naruto pulled something off his belt, as the first and the second started to move forward once again. As Naruto flooded chakra through the object, Hiruzen watched as the thing expanded into a large stone pot. He may not have seen it before, but he recognized it. After all, he heard about it, the artifact of a Sage of Sixth Path. But the large kanji for lightning that was supposed to be there was absent. As Naruto filled the pot with his chakra, Oshirama Tobirama Senju, first and second Hokage of Konoha, first Mokidon user and unparalleled water user, both of them turned to meet his gaze, but as soon as they did that, their fate was sealed, as the two names burned itself into the side of the pot. The two Hokage were not themselves though. They did not know the danger the pot posed to them. As Naruto went through one-handed seals, still keeping the pot gripped with his other hand on his side. The both of them flipped through hand sign to stop him, whatever he was doing, but Naruto was already done, as he pushed the lid of the pot. Both of them froze in place as a ferocious wind rushed through the forest that they were in. Their bodies started to stretch and distort as they were pulled towards the pot. Both of them tried to resist by grabbing at the floor, and the first sending wooden stakes into the ground. But it was all in vain, as the entire roof that they were holding onto was ripped apart, the tiles breaking apart, as the both of them were sucked into the pot like a swirl. They fully merged with the liquid inside. As Naruto placed the lid back on, the black kanji with their names on it went white for a moment, before it went dull, but it did not fade away, it just remained there. Naruto panted for a moment. He was surprised how stressful that whole sealing process was. He felt like he was having a battle between himself and two reanimated Kages. Naruto, Hiruzen said. Naruto finally turned, offering a small smile to his grandfather figure. Hey Jiji, I guess. Naruto raised his hand quickly as he stopped talking, as he rested on Hiruzen's shoulder. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes. Almighty push! Something was sent sailing behind Hiruzen, as he turned to see it was Orochimaru, as he slammed across the tile. As the Kusanagi blade was in his hand, he was trying to sneak up and kill Hiruzen. Orochimaru skidded to a stop, tearing roof tile off with him, as he cursed, as he retracted the blade back down into his throat in a disgusting way. Ah, Naruto-kun, so nice of you to join us at last. I expected Shizuku-chan to hold you up a bit longer, until I kill Sensei here. As a look of disgust appeared on Naruto's face, as it just burned him to see this man. Orochimaru, said Sarutobi, as he recovered from seeing Naruto. This fight is between you and me. Leave everyone else out of it. Now, old man, I'll get to you in just a moment. Why don't you rest those tired bones of yours? As the other two Kages were still fighting, as Orochimaru simply laughed. Sarutobi's face twisted in anger, as Orochimaru turned towards Naruto, a sadistic grin over his face. I must say, Naruto-kun, I had high hopes for you, but even when my clone dispersed, I was disbelieving. You really did a most wonderful job incapacitating all the shinobis out there. I could have only done a slightly better job. Well, they're all my pawns, tools that helped me get here to face my sensei. As Naruto scowled just the way this man talked. No, just the way he existed, sick Naruto to his core. You're nothing but a coward, hiding behind man and woman, giving them false promises so you can lead them to your deaths to accomplish your foolish goals, hiding behind immortal soldiers and psychological tricks instead of fighting yourself. My master told me it's better to choose a fight that will end in pain than force someone to fight it for you, out of fear. A vicious glare spread across Orochimaru's face, but it was gone quickly, as he smiled. But Naruto-kun, how can you be calling me a coward? Don't you see? Running away from your village in the dead of night after murdering two shinobis. Is that not cowardice by your own description? Naruto had tightening to a fist. Taking sanctuary with monks instead of owning up to your crimes, not facing your punishment. His grip tightened on his staff as he felt chakra bubbling up inside his body. On the outer edge of the barrier, the sound for widened your eyes in shock. Orochimaru-sama! Orochimaru ignored his subordinate though, as he wanted to get a reaction out of Naruto. How about stealing property from Kumo? Was it not cowardly to accept their hospitality for so long, then throw it back at them? As Naruto's eyes started to glow with the amount of power he was summoning and the power that was bubbling through his system. How about Miss Nakuni, Orochimaru said, as he smirked even wider. Orochimaru-sama! The Sound Four called out. But their cries went on deaf ears as Orochimaru ignored them, continuing on with his monologue. Miss Nakuni, will you allow your friend to get killed? And you were unable to save her, even with those incredible eyes of yours. As Naruto was trembling at this point, his chakra twisting inside his body, just waiting to be released. Orochimaru-sama! For a third time, a desperate call was unanswered. Except you didn't you, Naruto-kun? You got your revenge, didn't you? A light blue haze started to form on Naruto, the chakra finally seeping out because too much was being held back. How did it feel to see the light leave his eyes? To watch as your friend murderer die at your hands? I bet it's exquisite. How are you any different than me? Orochimaru-sama! Orochimaru had enough as he snapped his head towards his subordinate who disturbed him. What is it, you insolent whelp? Don't you see that It was then that he finally noticed a shadow that had fallen over the rooftop, along with the silence. All around them, surrounding the buildings on all sides, were giant walls of sand. It was a desert worth of sand, just hanging in mid-air, not even a drop falling. Orochimaru was under no illusion that the barrier could stand up to that. Ah, it seems you play your hand quite skillfully, Naruto-kun. Make no mistake, boy, we'll see each other again. You too, old man. Before anyone could react, he bit his thumb and speed through hand sign. Summoning jutsu, there was a large snake that burst right through the sand. As Orochimaru was off rather quickly, the barrier falling, as his four subordinates were running as well. Naruto wastes no time as he grabbed onto the pot as he shrinked as he leaped through the hole, quickly chasing after Orochimaru. As he spread out his senses, he could sense Orochimaru and his four subordinates, but he paused as he also sensed Haku and Fu. Their chakra dangerously low. Already he could feel some of the more powerful Jonins breaking through his sand. He knew that he didn't have much time, but he might never get the chance to go after Orochimaru again. But he would never leave his friends behind. As he turned back, he knew this was exactly what Shizuku would do. As he sprang towards his friends, he would never allow someone that he cared about to be hurt again. Never, if he could stop it. As Naruto made his way, as he could feel their chakra, it was incredibly weak. As Naruto could also sense around the village, as he could sense the Hokage is moving off in different direction. It seems like somehow this Hokage had tricked the Hokage and he was heading off in the direction where Orochimaru went. For a brief moment, Naruto felt limited as he couldn't create a clone to follow them. Orochimaru had already left off. With tremendous speed, the only way to catch him was to summon something. However, it seemed that the Hokage was also going in the same direction. Unfortunately for Naruto though, he couldn't create a clone. Despite Shikaku also helping him controlling the sand, Naruto's body was a proxy, it was the center, and that would split his concentration. Already he felt people breaking out, because he was focused on other things, trying to break their comrade free as well. He didn't need any more escaping while his concentration was divided. He was thinking though he should have summoned something to go after Orochimaru, but the man did it so quickly, it caught him completely off guard. Unfortunately for him, with the Mizukage soul, only came the memories and his feelings, not the years of experience and reflexes. Yagura was ruthless, never allowing an opponent to escape alive, unless it was a message for his other opponents, for them to realize there was no hope. He would have never allowed Orochimaru to escape like that. Although, it was Yagura in charge, and Naruto just didn't have the experience. It was useless though, no. He didn't want to stop as he was worrying about his friends, and he couldn't summon like this. In the end, he would have to leave it to the Kazekage and the Hokage to deal with. As he finally reached the area, as he felt the residual chakra in the air from two Jinchurikis fighting, as he quickly appeared inside the ruins of the building that they had destroyed. Naruto. As Naruto turned, as he spotted Haku, Fu, leaning on his shoulder. A soft smile on Haku's lips, as Fu was unconscious. Seeing Naruto there now, Haku couldn't hold on anymore. His body was already drained, he was just holding on long enough to make sure that Naruto arrived. With that, he passed out. Naruto walked over that smile. By all rights, Haku should be unconscious, but it was his will that allowed him to stay conscious to make sure that Fu would be alright. With his running gun, Naruto could see how low their chakra was. Dangerously low. But that wasn't the only damage, as Haku had burn marks on his arms, overusing the chakra in his coils. pushing himself too hard, and Fu had burn marks as well over her body from overexerting herself with the Bichu chakra. As Naruto wondered what kind of opponent they were fighting, he then turned as he took notice of the other chakra system at Jinchuriki. This was the one that he sensed earlier. He felt pride in his friends for defeating such a strong opponent. As he walked over though, this man would have killed his friends if they hadn't fought back. On one hand, he felt like he should be vengeful and angry at the man that hurt his friends. But he just was like that his friends were alive and would be perfectly fine after recovering. Plus, this man was like him. There was no telling what his life was, given that he was a Jinchuriki as well. His hand hesitated a bit. The man was unconscious. It would be very easy to extract Bichu right now. Take it away. Take away the power that he used to harm his friends, and that he would have used to harm the shinobis of this village. However, Naruto grew up. Years ago, he removed Manatub from Yujutsu, because he thought it was the right thing to do. Even after seeing that not all Jinchurikis have suffered after seeing Killer Bee. But Shizuku was happier with him, even though he mistaken him for his father. While Mantabe didn't resent him for taking him from her house. She was nowhere resentful. She was happier anyway. Time had changed him though, as he would think before performing a Bichu extraction on an unconscious man. He sighed. He would make a decision later. His hand fall down to his side. But a small tentacle of sand rose up from the ground. It was different, as it had Shizuku blue markings on it. It rose up to his face, looking at him, as Naruto patted it like you'd pat Shizuku, as he felt it tremble. In excitement, suddenly, Naruto felt hot fire burning through his veins. He knew what was happening, but how? The Gobi was being absorbed into him, but he wasn't actually doing anything. It was too fast, too strong. It felt like the Bichu was being poured into his body, shoved into him violently. As Naruto fell to the ground, feeling like his insides were burning through. As he was on one knee, holding on to his Shakijo, twitching. It only went on for a few seconds, as the seal finally absorbed it all. As Naruto panted, so he wouldn't fall over, as he clutched onto his staff to make sure he wouldn't fall down completely. Every single word in his body hurt. He desperately tried to pull himself back to his feet, as he couldn't. He couldn't deal with this now. He could feel people breaking out of his sand cocoon. He had to get his friends away from here before dynamic entry. One of the walls of the already shaking building collapsed in. As Naruto stood to his feet, he'd protect his friends. Guy, I didn't think that was necessary. There was a hole in the wall just over here. As Naruto saw two figures, one coming to the hole, and one just creating a hole for himself. Never mind that, my youthful friend. We're here to apprehend the unyouthful fiend that holds our village hostage. Naruto narrowed his eyes at that. He wasn't holding the village hostage. He was making sure that shinobis didn't kill themselves in a pointless fight. But he didn't say anything as he gathered his chakra. He's also holding the stone. And Stone Shinobi as well, you know? The man said in a rather lazy tone, as Naruto heard that voice before. As Naruto stood there, he knew that he was weakened. He was terribly weakened. And he couldn't really handle a fight right now. He didn't even know if he could handle one of his Deva Path techniques. Not to mention his chakra system was all messed up. He was sure that the pipes were probably leaking large into his mindscape. Come on now, kid. You were the one that was talking about peace. So to not start anything, just come with us. Come on, Kakashi. It is too unyouthful to mock the boy's belief. But he's right. Come with us. Our Hokage is a youthful, peaceful man. He will surely sort this all out. I think our Hokage is anything but youthful at this point, guy. He already retired once, remember? As they were talking, Naruto was trying to make his way over to his friends. Damn you, Kakashi, and your hip attitude. How could you say such a thing about the Hokage? As the both of them turned back to him. How did you break out of my sand, said Naruto. Why, with the power of my youth, of course. The man in the green spandex said. As Naruto looked at them. This man was Guy, the other one was Kakashi. His mind was all messed up at the moment. Not really focusing. But he knew that name, Kakashi. By that, I guess you mean you opened the gates, said Kakashi. Why, of course, my hip friend. And I'm guessing that you used your lightning blade to escape our sandy bond. Kakashi simply shrugged. The both of them seemed rather unconcerned. After all, the ninjas were getting free, and Naruto was surrounded. As Naruto already knew that they got out. After all, immediately after capturing, they were the first to get out. Why did it take you so long to find me, he asked. As he just needed a few more minutes for this to work, as he continued to make them talk. We were attempting to help out our youthful comrades, but the sand technique was rather difficult to deal with. But those in the springtime of their youth to prevail. I am sure my students are already free right now, helping out their fellow shinobis. He said it with a great deal of confidence, but Naruto wasn't so sure. Even in his weakened state, Jennings would be no match for his son. That's good, said Naruto, showing his eyes fully. It didn't matter right now, most of them had already seen it, as he put his eyes on full display for the village already. Rings, dark rings around his eyes, using Shizuku ability that much, giving him a more dangerous look. You treasure your comrades, your friends, and your precious people. In that way, I hope you understand why I do this, said Naruto, as the chakra started to circulate towards his hands. For my friends. Almighty push, he said. Both of them are caught completely off guard as a force slammed into them as he crashed into a wall. As Naruto didn't add so much force, he didn't want to hurt them, but he hoped they understand. Well, they were Jonins, they could handle themselves. As he went through hand signs, summoning, he said, as massive wings flap. The bird then took off a great beak bird, as Naruto got his comrades on, and with that he was gone. Hiruzen arrived as he saw Kakashi and Guy looking at the giant bird, as he started to issue orders quickly. But all the sand that was holding the village suddenly fall away, freeing everyone in an instant. All of them breathed a sigh of relief, thought they were going to be crushed, but Naruto wouldn't do that. The stone and stone shinobis realized they were surrounded in a village, as the Konoha shinobis was around them. Not having the element of surprise, they stood no chance, as Hiruzen watched the bird pass over the Hokage monument, right over the fourth Hokage's head. From a few feet away, Naruto watched, as he was currently inside a chameleon, yes, who was currently invisible, with his two friends inside as well, as he hoped they didn't wake up yet, because they might get freaked out. But at the moment they were safe, as Naruto felt his body finally giving out, as he fell unconscious. The bird was just a distraction. The chameleon knew that the best time to leave when the shinobis were all moving around, so that he could get out of here unnoticed. Naruto passed out only to wake up inside of his mindscape, as another pipe was now in there, leaking. It was soaked with a liquid that represented the Gobi's chakra. He groaned as he got to his feet. Even within the seal, his body still ached. As Naruto made his way down to where the Bijus were, as he was already listening out for the sound of tails banging against the bars, he was now going to visit his dysfunctional family. A small smile came to his face. Over the years that he has been traveling, he started to see them as a family. Shizuku was like a little misguided brother who just needed care. Monotabe was like a sister. She was easily the most relatable. Since her past with cooperating with humans, she was the most helpful and came to knowledge for him to seek. She was quite playful at times, so it wouldn't be so bored for her. Aisabi, he didn't know all that well. She was mostly quiet in herself. When she spoke though, it was rather calm. Son Goku though was prideful and brash. The Kyuubi still had that icy feeling, and every time Naruto wanted something from him, it took a great deal of convincing, and whenever he told Naruto, it was like he didn't deserve the information at all. He was a struggle, but Naruto enjoyed the banter. It was like he saw the fox as an ultimate challenge. Naruto was confused though as he heard nothing at all. No banging, no shouting. As he entered, not even Shizuku announcing him being there with his loud shout. But it became noticeable why. As he was sleeping, he was probably tired out from helping Naruto with the sand. The other Bijus were quiet though. That was strange. Monotabe looked concerned. Aisabi had retreated back into herself. Even the Kyuubi looked a bit interested and a bit amusing to see what was going to happen. That was strange. After all, the Kyuubi has always chosen to ignore him, but now he was looking directly at him. So you're the one that removed me from Han. As Naruto took notice of a new cell that was between Son Goku and the Kyuubi. As Naruto looked at the Gobi, it had the body of a stallion, but the head was sleek, and it had a rather large jaw. It had white fur, maybe. It was hard to tell. It also had 4 horns that was slicked back. If Naruto had to guess, it was a combination of a dolphin and a horse. And Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto wins at how weak he sounded, but the pain hadn't been, well, gone. It was still there. It was calming down, but it was still there. The Gobi simply lowered his head as he looked at the monk. Why is it that you bear a striking resemblance to the sage? Not that, but you also bear the Rinnegan. What mockery is this? Tell me, why have I been brought here? But guys, we end this episode right here. If you want something part of this or not to do, like, subscribe, comment down below, and turn on that bell notification to stay posted. Remember to share to all of your friends in your social media platform. But I'm out for now. Stay tuned for the rest of what is coming your way. Peace.